There are times when I go into a review and have very low expectations for a model, but it then manages to surprise me. Unfortunately, that is not the case today, because here I don't just have low expectations, but I am very sure that it will manage to even underwhelm me. But how can I make a review like this? Well, only with a good partner on my side, in this case Jumbolino Model, which is the store where I get all my new aircraft models from and make reviews like this possible. And not just because they have fair prices and great service, but also because the people behind the Jumbolino Model store genuinely are interested in aircraft model and understand what it is being a collector. So I can highly recommend them to you. You can find a link to the Jumbolino Model store in the video description below. With that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at a Boeing 787-9, the Dreamliner of Qatar Airways. At the front of the box we have a cutout so we can get a glimpse of the aircraft model inside, and on top of that we have the Qatar Airways branding. The backside of the box, nothing exciting here, just another cutout. Really, I mean, the most basic box you can get from Herpa Wings. It is dreadful, and Herpa still doesn't want to change, which is a big shame. And here she is, the Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner in the supposedly standard livery of Qatar Airways. Why do I say it like this? Well, because, this is obviously not how the standard livery of Qatar Airways looks like, because Herpa has used the completely wrong color. But we will get more into that topic later in the review. For now, we just focus on the model itself to see what details have been added, how they have been added. Are there some missing? Well, that all we will find out throughout the review. Starting off with the tail section, where we on the vertical stabilizer have the Qatar Airways branding. We do also have a bit of detailing on the horizontal stabilizer. On the fuselage we then find the Qatari flag, we have the full registration code of the aircraft and the Dreamliner branding. And then towards the very tail of the aircraft we do have a bit of detailing around the APU exhaust. Now, on top of the fuselage, we do find the addition of two sat domes. The real aircraft does also indeed have two sat domes, a smaller one in the back and a larger one in the front of the fuselage. You could argue that the smaller one on the aircraft model is slightly oversized, but I would say, considering how inconsistent Herpa is with their sat domes, this is close enough to reality, at least for my taste. But of course, this is just something you have to decide yourself if you can live with these kind of sat domes or not. At the front of the aircraft and across the fuselage, we then have the Qatar Airways branding in English writing and also in Arabic. We do also find next to the front cabin door a one-word logo of which the airline is a member. And then we have a few small markings here, some static ports or hatches. That actually looks fairly decent in my opinion. But we can move on to the cockpit section itself, where we have the cockpit windows with the window wipers. We also have the circular marking around the radome. Underneath the nose we have the aircraft type specification. And you might now rightly say, wait a minute, isn't there normally also an emergency hatch for the cockpit just above the cockpit windows? And you are right, normally there is. And on this model there is also, but it is so thinly printed on that you hardly can see it. I had to look several times before I actually could notice it. So in my opinion, Herpa has messed up here. Where Herpa has done a much better job with their print quality is then on the engine nacelles. Here we very clearly can see the silver leading edge that has been printed on, as well as the Qatar Airways logo or branding and the safety markings. Also, the physical detailing on the 787-9 engines of Herpa Wings I think are really nice, especially with the chevron nozzles, and also here from the front very, very nicely can see the engine fan blades. And from the engines we can move on to the wings, which we should also take a closer look at. Starting off with the top side, where we have the different flap slats and spoilers carved out. We have the markings as to where to walk on the wing. The underside of the wings has more nice physical detailing and also the full registration code of the aircraft. The landing gear on this aircraft model is the standard landing gear that Herpa uses for all their 787-9 Dreamliners, which is fine for the main landing gear because I think that genuinely looks quite nice. Also the front landing gear, not too bad, but I would really wish for a Herpa Wings model in 2025 which actually has some printed details around the front landing gear. On the belly of the aircraft we then find the Qatar Airways branding once more, of course immediately then destroyed by a hole in the fuselage for a stand that is not included with this aircraft model. What a shame. But what is nice on the belly of the aircraft is the ram air intakes as a physical detailing. I think that actually looks quite nice. And then last but not least, we do also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Boeing 787-9 in the supposedly standard livery of Qatar Airways from Herpa Wings in scale 1 to 500. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Now look, before I rip this model to pieces, let's just focus on the few things that Herpa is doing well with this aircraft model. Look, I think that the mold that Herpa has for their 787-9 Dreamliner is actually quite good. I don't really have much to complain about here. We also don't have the ground clearance issue on this aircraft model that we experienced with the last Dreamliner from Herpa Wings featuring the Austrian Airlines livery. That was a one-time occurrence. And yeah, as we can see, on this aircraft model, it's not an issue, and I haven't heard anyone reporting having a ground clearance issue with this Qatar Airways Dreamliner, so that's good. Also, when we talk sat domes, I mean, Herpa is wildly inconsistent with them, and even though it's maybe not 100% correct on this aircraft model, it is, for me at least, close enough to be respectable and to be featured on the model as it is. And look, when we talk print quality, I also really don't have much to complain about. Yes, the emergency hatch at the front, the print there has clearly messed up because you hardly see it. That should not look like this. It should be much more visible. There are some reporting on print lines, and technically, yes, we do have a slight print line going from the white to the brownish gray coloring, but it is really marginal. I mean, you have to really look for it to see it, at least on this aircraft model. There might be some models where it's more visible. For me, it's not a big issue on this aircraft model. We don't have really smudges around the aircraft model. It's pretty clean overall. But of course, we cannot avoid the big elephant in the room, and that is that Herpa has simply used the wrong color on the what is supposed to be a light gray, and here is like a brownish gray of the Qatar Airways livery. And look, for me, there is really no excuse here. Herpa Wings is clearly getting the color codes from the airlines, so there should be no guessing around what colors they are adding to their models. Also, it's hardly the first Qatar Airways aircraft model that Herpa is producing, so again here, they should have plenty of experience to draw from when making a Qatar Airways model. There is simply no excuse. And the miscoloration here is so obvious, so blatant, that you can notice it even when the model is in the box. You see it. There is just no excuse to release the model like this. It is so obviously wrong that there is no good explanation as to why you would even put this model into the shelves of stores and allow people to buy it. This should have been returned to the factory and be redone before ever being released. And a big shame on Herpa to release a model like this with such an obvious mistake. This is unacceptable. And I mean, of course Herpa knows what the Qatar Airways Grey should look like. This is what they showed in their catalog when they announced the model. And then the audacity, or should I say the balls, to charge collectors a recommended retail price of 45 euros for this aircraft model is beyond tone deaf. And if this was the first aircraft model which would be released like this with such an obvious mistake, I mean, you could perhaps forgive Herpa, but it is just not. This is just another aircraft model in a long line of complete and utter failures from Herpa Wings. The piss yellow wings on the German Air Force A350, the 747 Cargolux freighter which came in the completely wrong mold, the Qatar Airways A350-1000 Oneworld livery which had a completely angled print, the British Airways A350-1000s where Herpa needed 3 attempts and still didn't manage to get one model out without a mistake in the livery, the Fly Dubai 737 MAX which was a fantasy livery and had nothing to do with what the real livery looked like, or the Maersk Air 767 and 777 which are print line central, just to name a few, and now this as the latest example of Herpa not giving a damn about their products nor their customers. So because Herpa is giving us nothing but disrespect with this aircraft model, I'm very sorry to say that I cannot recommend anyone to buy this aircraft model, and see this as I bought this aircraft model so you don't have to. Now, with that very unfortunate situation, we have reached the end of today's review. If you have enjoyed it nonetheless, then please feel free to leave a like, or if you're new around here, why not hit subscribe. With that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.